We do have a quorum. Those appearing virtually have been sound tested, and the clerk advises me we are okay to begin. With that, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 100 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, October the 18th, 2023, the committee will continue its study on Bill C-319, an act to amend the Old Age Security Act. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and attending virtually by Zoom. I want to take a few moments to review procedure. Those attending in the room and by Zoom have the option of speaking in the official language of their choice. Use interpretation services with the headphone in the room. And those appearing virtually, use the globe icon on the bottom of your surface and select the official language of your choice. If interpretation, there's an issue, please get my attention by raising your hand or using the raised hand icon on your surface. We'll suspend while it is being corrected. Please address all questions through I, the chair. And to get my attention again, simply raise your hand or use the raised hand icon. I also want to advise members, please, those in the room, if you would keep your earpiece away from the mic when you're not using it and your phones away from the microphone, because this can cause issues with the interpreter's hearing, and we do not want any of them to have any issue. And I know one can get passionate from time to time, but if you could remember to speak slowly for the benefit of the translators, it would be good as well. With that, I would like to now introduce our witnesses for the first panel from l'Association québécoise de défense des droits et des personnes retraitées et pré-retraitées, Pierre-Claude Poulin. Welcome. As well, from Bridges of Love, York region, here in the room, Mr. Casbaro. Have I got it right? Casbaro? Welcome. We will begin. As you know, each one of you have 5 minutes to give an opening statement. So we will begin with Monsieur Poulin pour 5 minutes. Monsieur.
Mr. Poulin, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you. And hello. I am Pierre-Claude Poulin, and I'm responsible for the Income and Taxation Committee for retirees without an employer pension at our association. Our association has no political alignment, 30,000 members, people who are retired, most of whom do not have an employer pension. And this is the problem in Canada, you see, given that seniors, who represent about 20% of Canada's population, are affected by the closure of thousands of old age homes, evictions. Some of them are in the streets and some are bankrupt. Something must be done, and it should have already been done in the past. In 2023, 39% of the retirees in Quebec required excellent our GIS and extra monies to keep people at $21,634, which is the poverty line for Canada, and without credits for pharmacy, for medical treatments, and so on. Same year, 49% of retirees were at the revenue level without having to pay taxes. So basically, they're the same as those who are to benefit from social assistance, but they did get a small pension which complemented and filled in for the amount of the GIS. So this 10% of retirees then got or do receive enough or have kept aside enough money for retirement so that they receive no extra benefits. Why? Because our old age pension system has not progressed and kept up with the times, and we do need to do something about it. Canada was a pioneer in 2017. Other countries tried to follow in our footsteps when it came to old age security, and we were one of the first nations to provide support to retirees. In 2023, Canada, a member of the G7 group, became 13th among OCDE countries when it comes to basic pensions for its retired citizens. In the documents that I have provided you with, there are a number of notes about what's been done to try to catch up, to improve old age security. As I have little time, I will go directly to the matter of how damageable it has been not to raise old age security over the past few years. For example, access to housing. We see that assistance to the elderly, the GIS, is now based on a specific index, which is a market-based measure, which actually equals the poverty line for Canada. But you are allowed to have access to special housing, a co-op, for example, if you have a revenue under $32,000. But to support retirees of Canada, the index is $21,000. So that's a $10,000 gap, basically, that should be dealt with. Another issue, of course, is local taxes. Local taxes, especially on housing, is rising faster than the changes to the old age security system. And when you are likely to live to 85 years of age, and you've got like 20 years of those with a small index raised, on your OAS without anything else, it's unlikely that you'll be able to continue paying your taxes, local taxes. Another issue that I've mentioned is people without housing. In Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, more and more people are in the streets. In June 2021, 32%, suddenly in July of that year, 32% of the homeless sleeping in parks were men of 72 to 74 years of age who had been unable to renew their leases, thought they could find something cheaper, didn't find anything in July. So at that traditional time when people change housing, they had to sleep in the park. Something else to note, the closure of care homes, nursing homes. 975 of them exist in Quebec, and the main reason is due to the fact that people who depend mostly on GIS and OAS don't have enough money to afford these homes. Another thing I wanted to add, bankruptcy. I'm terribly sorry, sir. Let me just finish on this point, though, if I may, Chair. When it comes to bankruptcy, Canada does protect people who are owed money up to $32,000. You don't have to seize anything if it's a lower amount, though. The same government, however, provides only $20,000 to its retirees. So there's a big gap there. So it would be very important to better plan a raise to old age security. Thank you, Mr. Punai.
5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Alessandro Casbaro, and I'm honored to represent Bridges of Love of York Region, a seniors nonprofit organization committed to enhancing the lives of seniors in our community. Our organization operates on the fundamental belief that every senior deserves to age in place with dignity, independence, and respect. Bridges of Love of York Region provides snow removal and lawn maintenance services to seniors in need, allowing them to remain in their homes and age in place comfortably. Our team works tirelessly to ensure that seniors have the support they need to navigate the challenges of aging while maintaining their autonomy and quality of life. Through our programs and services, we strive to create a supportive community where seniors feel valued, engaged, and empowered. In our work, we have had the privilege of engaging with countless seniors in our community, listening to their stories, concerns, and aspirations. As we all know, Canada's seniors population is growing rapidly, and with that, the challenges they face are becoming increasingly complex. Basic necessities such as housing, utilities, groceries, and healthcare expenses continue to rise, often outpacing the income of our seniors, especially those relying on fixed incomes like old age security pensions. In recent years, we have witnessed a disturbing trend where many seniors are struggling to make ends meet, forced to make difficult decisions between paying for essential needs or compromising their quality of life. This is particularly concerning as it directly impacts their ability to age in place with dignity and independence, which is a fundamental principle that we strive to uphold. One of the most distressing consequences of this financial strain is the prospect of seniors having to sell their homes, which they have worked so hard to obtain and maintain over the years. For many seniors, their homes represent a place of comfort, stability, and cherished moments. It is where they have raised families, celebrated milestones, and built their lives. The thought of having to part with their homes due to financial constraints is deeply distressing for seniors, as it not only disrupts their sense of security and stability, but also severs the ties to their community and support networks. Selling one's home is often seen as a last resort for seniors, a decision made out of necessity rather than choice, and one that can have profound emotional and psychological impacts. At Bridges of Love of York Region, we firmly believe that seniors should not have to face the prospect of selling their homes, simply to afford basic necessities or cover rising expenses. Our homes are more than just bricks and mortar. They are symbols of our hard work, perseverance, and the memories we hold dear. By increasing the amount of the full pension provided to seniors under the Old Age Security Act, as proposed in Bill C-319, we can help alleviate some of the financial burdens faced by seniors and ensure they can afford to remain in their homes with dignity and independence. This is not just about financial assistance. It is about honoring their contributions and sacrifices made by our seniors and affirming their right to age in place. In conclusion, I urge this committee to consider the profound impact that the rising cost of living has had on the well-being of our seniors and to support measures that enhance their financial security and independence. By prioritizing the needs of our aging population, we can build a more inclusive and compassionate society for all Canadians. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Casbaro. Before we begin, I want to welcome Ms. Roberts and Mr. Aria to the committee today. So we will begin with Ms. Roberts for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is going to be to Mr. Gasparo. I want to commend you, and I know your mom's involved in the foundation that was started, quote me if I'm wrong, 3 years ago. It is a service that I have been honored to participate in and visit many of the seniors and hear the same stories that you're hearing. Could you share with the committee what you're hearing about the high cost of living, the carbon tax, the tax on food, the tax on fuel, the tax on their natural gas bill? Could you maybe share some of those thoughts with us?
Through the chair to MP Roberts, thank you for that question. Recently at a seminar we hosted, which I know you were able to attend as well, 2 seniors came up to me, their husband and wife, and the husband required knee surgery. He requires knee surgery. And he's been putting it off because they've been having such a difficult time making ends meet that they're concerned about how to afford to pay for the walker that he would need after that. So we hear countless stories just like this one that seniors are doing everything in their power to try and make ends meet. That's why the services we provide are so important. They can't afford another $600 expense for snow removal, $500 expense for lawn maintenance when you're barely getting by every week. And so another increase on the carbon tax might just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It just, they can't afford that anymore.
So when I know that you raise money to help the seniors, what other avenue do you seek out to help the seniors? Because I know it's a charitable organization. What other support are you receiving from different levels of government?
Through the chair, once again, we've applied for the New Horizons grants through the federal government, as well as a number of grants through the province.
And so I know I was at one of the seniors that I spoke at the committee, and she shared with me her story of having to cut back on her groceries. And the reason she had to do that was because she didn't want to have to move in with her children. But she is realizing that that might be a reality, that she's not going to have that choice because of the cost of living and living in the home that she raised her numerous children. What can you say about what we need to do to ensure that the seniors that raised us, the seniors that built this country, what would you recommend to this government on how we can enhance their life?
Through the chair, we've had the pleasure of working and speaking with gerontologists who've enlightened us about the importance of aging in place, the psychological, emotional, mental health issues that arise when you lose that tie to your community where your cherished moments have taken place. So the government needs to be able to cut these costs or address this rising inflation that is making it very difficult for seniors to make ends meet. We hear it often about cutting back on groceries, cutting back on driving, whatever it may be. But we fundamentally believe that they deserve to age in place. They've worked their entire lives. Many of them built this country, and we need to ensure that we can take care of them in their senior years.
So Mr. Gasparo, I just want to go back to one thing, and I know many of the seniors that come to your events, a lot of them say to them that that's the only thing they have in life, that it's because of the outreach that you provide, whether it's a small little, I think one of the events I was at, you had a health person there explaining yoga, how they can stay healthy, because a lot of them want to stay healthy because they can't afford medication. When I heard that, it kind of broke my heart. Like they can't afford the medication to keep them alive. So they're doing everything that they possibly can to ensure that they stay healthy. So I thought that that was good. And she said that what she's done is worked with the therapist that you had to be able to learn more about what she can do, A, to stay healthy and reduce her costs. Do you find that a lot of seniors are complaining about the cost of what it is to live, especially with food, groceries, medication, gas, taxes on their property? A lot of them are saying that their property taxes are going up.
Through the chair, yes, we are definitely hearing that. And on top of the services we provide, as you mentioned, whether it be a seminar, a social event, I think it's really important to keep them socially engaged, for them to know that we're here to help them in whatever that may be. But yeah, they're very clearly made it clear to us, made it clear to you that it's becoming increasingly difficult to make ends meet. And a lot of them are dipping into their savings, forced to go back to work. If the savings runs out, where do they go, right? And they've worked so hard their entire life to provide for their children, grandchildren, whatever it may be, built this country, and we're asking them to go back to work when they're supposed to be retired. I don't think that's right.
Thank you. So I want to ask Mr. Poulian.
Yes.
I hope I pronounced that properly. I apologize. You mentioned that the 32% of seniors, like the population is growing. I've read recently that by 2030, we're going to have 25% of our population are going to be seniors. Does that scare you in any way?
Énormément.
Yes, indeed. Incredibly. I'm very worried. And foresight, economic foresight of elected officials with regard to seniors or the retired, the vigilance, economic vigilance of our governments, is just not there. In 1966, when we created the Canada Pension Plan and Quebec's pension plan, the RRQ, to manage the Canada Pension Plan in our province, old age security had been increased, but it couldn't be raised high enough. So we created this extra amount, the guaranteed income supplement, that was supposed to be in effect for a short time. It's not 1966 now. That was a long time ago. And we still have this GIS. So until we solve this problem, there are people who will wind up at the poverty threshold. That's 49% who are at that threshold.
It's Mr. Area for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I came into politics about 10 years back with three main objectives. One is retirement income, secure retirement income for all seniors, affordable housing, and third, to make sure that Canada remains at the forefront of the knowledge-based economy so that the prosperity that we enjoy today is available for the future generation. So the topic of this old age security is quite close to me. We have done quite a bit on that. We have reformed the CPP. I think that was when CPP was first designed way back. Then almost every employee had the workplace pension. Then they had the CPP. Then they had their own personal savings. So it was targeted to cover about 25% of the retirement income. With the reform that we made for the CPP, now we are targeting that to go up to almost 33 to 35% of the typical retirement income. So we have taken quite a bit of measures over a period of time. And we all know that we permanently increased OAS by 10% for seniors above 75. Mr. Casbaro, you deal with the seniors. What percentage, what are the number of seniors who live under poverty in Canada?
Through the chair, I don't have those numbers right now, but I could share with you after.
So I'm sure you will agree that whenever people are in need, we need to target the support to the people in need instead of giving to the people who don't need, who are not in that need. The number of seniors living under poverty across Canada is around 250,000. We have an obligation as a society to take care of our seniors. We have the duty to provide them affordable housing. And we have committed, when people come and ask me about affordable housing, my first question to them is, where is your proposal? We have money available ready to construct affordable housing. Where is the proposal? The same thing, we have taken targeted measure to the people under poverty, including seniors. So that is the way I suggest we should go, instead of giving a blanket support to the people who are not in need. And Mr. Casbaro, again, sorry to put you on spot. Do you know what is the total amount of spending for social protection at all levels of the government? Approximate amount. Every year, how much government spends on social protection, like old age security, family benefit, disability, unemployment insurance, etc.?
I do not.
235 billion in 2017, and it's increasing. So I'm not just saying it's the federal government, but the provincial government, the territories, and the federal government, they're all looking at ways to support those in need in the society, and amongst that, the seniors, obviously, at the forefront. Mr. Pauling, the same thing. Do you agree with me that we should focus the support from the government to the people who are in need of the support instead of giving the benefits even to the people who don't need it?
Je comprends.
I understand. I really understand what you're getting at. That said, I think that real equity, I don't get that in our system you've got people who are living on welfare, who have the guaranteed income supplement, basically, and others who receive payments out of the retired, pension, the RPC, or the Quebec version, with small pensions, so therefore don't have access to welfare, but wind up at the same level of revenue. So the 32 have social assistance and pay no taxes, and 49% of retired people do not pay taxes either. So there's 10% that are retired but don't pay taxes, so they're unable to pay for any services for which they get tax credits, you see. It's about they're not having access to tax credits. So I think it would be smart to increase OAS in this regard, and we could, of course, claw that back from people who have a bit more money.
I agree with you. We have to provide support for the people who are in need. There's no disagreement there. But my question to you was, which I don't think you answered, should we also give financial support to the people who do not need it?
No.
No.
That's what, Mr. Casbaro, the same question. I agree with you that we have to provide support to the people who are in need, the people who are under poverty level, the people who can't afford to pay the high cost of rent today. We have to provide affordable housing. But do you agree with me that we should target our needs to the people who require it, but not to everyone, even the people who are making good money?
Yes, of course I agree with that, but when you're raising the carbon tax and inflationary
Mr.
spending...
Casparo, this meeting is not about the carbon tax or the pricing of carbon pollution, and whenever you talk about carbon pricing, you should also know that 75% or rather 100% of the thing goes back to the people who give it, and 8 out of 9, especially the seniors who are in the category to whom we are addressing the issue today, they get more than what they spend on the pricing on carbon pollution. So, this is not a political forum, Mr. Kaspar.
Thank you. Mr. Casbro, the time.
These seniors, and it's abundantly clear, no politics involved. It's that rising cost of living is making life more affordable for our seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Area. Madame Shabat, pour 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes, Ms. Shabat. Thank you, Chair, and a warm thank you to our witnesses. Thank you especially for your support to seniors in many areas of their lives, and also by carrying out studies and knowing the statistics. Mr. Poulin, if you have any further documents to provide us with, it will be with great pleasure that members of the committee will receive it. There are some unusual questions being put here, but that's likely what motivated the government to decide to increase the old age security pensions. But as of 65 years or older, abandoning those who are 60 to 64 or 55 to 64. Mr. Poulin, do you think that from the point of view of the members you represent, that people who do draw the pension, the old age pension, the 60 for that lower group, do they think they don't need it? The members we represent all need the guaranteed income supplement overall, most of them, because they have no earnings from a prior employer, a pension from an employer. So this is an increase that the government allowed for using an economic index, a market-based measure, to support retirees. But was this the right way to go about it? That's the first thing. And the economic index that was used by the government wasn't actually the poverty threshold. That's what they used. So that means that they targeted retirees who are under the poverty threshold based on the market-based measure, and they were basically allowed enough to reach the market-based measure. So I'm wondering, is it normal that someone who's at that threshold based on a market-based measure, should they be allowed to save money? Fine, but without giving them 10% of an increase, they're really at the poverty threshold. So what's the effect for these retirees? And you've stated that most of them live on this fixed income, this pensioner's income. So when there's inflation, we know that that's a very negative situation. It's not the same as an employment earnings. So as of 65 years, it applies, and the Liberals, of course, set it at 65 years. So that's fine. But now there's a breach in the pension regime by declassifying, by creating this inequity for those who are from 65 to 74 years of age. So what's the effect on that age group? The major effect is isolation. It's an economic isolation. That's what I call it. And there's a little chapter in the document I've given you about this topic. You've got someone, you've got $22,000 income. You're asked out to the restaurant or theater or to a show, and you say, oh, I'm terribly busy. I'm busy because you don't have the financial ability, leeway really, to go out. So that's economic isolation. And that isolation is a source of dementia. It's a source of Alzheimer's. And when people are retired as of 65 years, these are the last years in which they should remain as active as possible to put off those, mental issues, dementia and so on. They've got to stay active. So this is the first effect that I note. The second, they lose their dwelling. They will sell their home before they sell their car. That's another big effect that we note. When you have the average salary of a Canadian and then overnight at the age of 65 years and 11 months, you suddenly go from 75,000 to the poverty threshold, 23,000. I mean, it's a real catastrophe. You might be able to hang on to your home for a few years, but then you'll sell it to be able to survive and you'll move into an apartment. And that's a terrible drama. Terribly dramatic, especially given that housing, apartments are costing more and more. It's really incredible. So people wind up in 2.5s, but hey, going from a house to a 2.5, it's really dramatic. That's the sort of thing that unfortunately we are seeing in reality now. So, Mr. Poulin, do you think this is a type of ageism? We've created a system in which elderly people from 65 to 74 years of age are just abandoned. We maintain that they're doing fine, they've got more revenue, that they're richer, they don't need help. I think that, elected officials in the past, when they created the old age security system in 1967, their intentions were very good. When it was reformed later on with other pension plans, yes, their intentions were very good. But economic foresight to ensure that old age security continues to be increased, that's not something we've seen. Normally, social assistance for the retirees should not have continued to exist had the old age security been increased bit by bit, and that didn't happen. So we have this supplement, the guaranteed income supplement, to ensure that retirees continue to have at least $23,000 a year. This is not the way to do it.
For 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really appreciate Mr. Poulin's testimony today in talking about the market basket measure. And, for the first time ever, the government has a poverty line, a measure, and they certainly shouldn't be, no one in Canada should be having to live below it. So thank you for that. I just had some unfinished business from the last meeting that I wanted to address first, Mr. Chair, and this was in relation to two of the witnesses last meeting talking about the Canada Caregiver Credit, and I wanted to read a piece of correspondence that I received this week. I am a 70-year-old wife, and my husband is a stroke survivor. I am reaching out to you seeking assistance and support. I'm currently providing crucial care to my husband who suffered a stroke. Every day I dedicate my time and energy as a full-time caregiver, ensuring he receives the necessary attention, including tube feeding. Despite my commitment, it feels like my efforts often go unnoticed, and the financial strain of these medical requirements is substantial. Balancing this caregiving role with my health have become challenging. I am investing both time and resources to ensure the well-being of my loved one. However, it has been disheartening to find a lack of recognition or support from various avenues. In my pursuit to provide the best care possible, financial assistance becomes a pressing need. Currently, my old age pension is the sole source of income, and it falls short of covering the escalating costs associated with my husband's medical care. I kindly request your support in addressing this matter and exploring available avenues for assistance. And it goes on, Mr. Chair, but I wanted to move a motion in relation to that, and in relation to testimony we heard around two witnesses saying they'd like to see the Canada Caregiver Credit be made into a refundable tax-free benefit. So I will read the motion for consideration that the committee write to Minister Freeland to highlight her mandate to convert the Canada Caregiver Credit to a refundable tax-free benefit and ask that it be part of the upcoming spring budget so that Canadians who care for their loved ones are also looked after.
Madame Zerillo, the motion is in order. It has been circulated in both official languages. Questions on the motion? Seeing no question, we will go to a vote. Madam Clerk, a vote on the motion, on the motion of Madame Zerillo. Pardon? Call a recorded vote.
Mr. Fergus-Kettles?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Area?
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Falk?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Absolutely.
Mr. Aitchison?
Yes.
Madame Chabot?
No.
Ms. Zerillo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Madame Zerillo, you have 2 minutes and 50 seconds left of your time.
Chair, and thank you for considering that. And I'm sorry, it's just a very easy one that I wanted to make sure that moves forward after testimony. So, Mr. Pilon, I just wanted to ask about tax filings. So I've heard from many seniors that if they don't get their taxes filed, they also lose some of their entitlements and their benefits, sometimes not being reinstated for 18 months or more. Is this an experience you've had, and how do you think the Government of Canada can correct that? Or you've seen, sorry, and that you think the Government of Canada can correct?
Il y a beaucoup de crédits.
There are a number of tax credits which are non-refundable, and you have to know what you're doing to use them. As for the refundable tax credits, I'm really not a specialist, so I can't give you an answer. I know that the non-refundable ones, you have to have the receipts, you need revenues, and 49% of the retired do not have access to them.
So when it comes to getting OAS or GIS, if a senior doesn't file their taxes from the year before or 2 years before, they can lose their GIS and also their OAS because they haven't filed taxes. And I'm just wondering if that's a situation you've seen and how the government could amend that. For example, the NDP are saying if the seniors could have a year grace period, if they haven't been able to file their taxes, that they wouldn't lose their entitlements like GIS or OAS.
Définitivement.
Yes, definitely. Indeed, we really need to keep in mind that some people wind up in the streets. A retiree who has lost their home, who has lost their business, there's been some sort of a severe illness, let's say, loses their home sometimes, no longer has an address, and winds up squatting really in the streets. And this makes matters very difficult. It takes we really need to pay attention to these people. It takes time. Yes, a grace period would be great.
Still have 20 seconds. You mentioned in your testimony about the need for pharmacare medication. I'm just wondering about, there's a dental care program going now for seniors. We're looking at having pharmacare. How would this help seniors? How would these two social programs help seniors?
Je sais que.
Well, I'm aware that in our association, members are highly enthusiastic to see that they will at least get help for dental cleaning and minimal dental services. I would like to point out, though, that among those who pay no taxes, the 49% who owe no taxes, they can't deduct dental care or medical care. So if you've got 21,000, there's a big clientele that here that have all their teeth removed and have dentures put in. So it's really helpful to make sure we help them with that, the dental plan, yes. Thank you, Ms. Chabot. And Mr. Poulin.
5 minutes.
Thank
Ms.
you
Hall?
very
Yeah.
much, Chair. First of all, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to be here, for the service that you provide for seniors, and the work that you're doing to help those, as it's been said, who have built this country and have contributed so much to it. I also just want to note that the arrogance that we've heard today from the other side is really appalling. It is appalling to me. It was the Liberals that decided to discriminate against seniors and form two classes, those that would receive 10% more and those that wouldn't. If the Liberals truly cared about seniors, they maybe would have done this through the GIS as opposed to the OAS. So this is a mess that they have created. OAS is clawed back anyway, right? Seniors that make an income, wealthier seniors, OAS is clawed back. So I just want to also note that to say that this meeting isn't about the carbon tax is also untrue and tone deaf. I hear from people, especially those on fixed incomes, how everything is more expensive. And the basic necessities like food, fuel, home heating, these are necessities that Canadians need to live and to live healthy and long lives. So I just can't believe the line of questioning that came from the other side. And you know what? I think it makes a good point also. The cost of living is increasing, and it's set to go up again April 1st. We know the carbon tax is going to increase once again. And there are so many seniors, and I hear this all the time in my office, that are being forced back to work. It's either you get a job, go back into the workforce, or you lose your home, or you starve to death, or you die because you cannot afford the basic medication that you need in order to live. So my first question for Mr. Poulin, I'm just wondering, does your organization at all measure the amount of seniors who have to return to the workforce after retiring?
On est à faire des sondages.
We are polling now to get some valid figures. Comments from our members, yes, who return to work, but I can't give you a statistic. But in a couple of months, we'll have information. But yes, retirees do return to work or simply don't take retirement as early as they might otherwise.
When those are available, table them to this committee, since this is the committee that the Minister of Seniors is supposed to be accountable to? Okay, thank you very much. I'm also wondering, do any of your membership or any of your members maybe make mention of why they need to go back to work, if they are going back to work?
Manque de revenus.
Well, lack of income, that's really what it is. Insufficient earnings or savings. I was talking to you about towns and taxing, up to 9% higher in some of the towns of Quebec. Local taxes, municipal taxes, and just the RPC and the RRQ, they're indexed, but the indexing is insufficient. So often the taxes are increasing faster than the pension. And there's a municipal tax on buildings, of course, as well, that's increasing. And this has an effect on rent. And if they are unable to cover these amounts, they have to move or sell their homes.
Well, it's not just federal tax. It's provincial tax, it's municipal tax, there's the carbon tax that then the federal government is taxing GST on top of the carbon tax, so there's a tax on a tax. People are literally being taxed to death. I'm just wondering very quickly, Mr. Poulin, do you have any suggestions of what the federal government could do to ensure that seniors that have to or want to return to work can actually get ahead, since they are taxed and taxed and taxed?
La priorité, c'est d'augmenter.
The priority will be to increase old age security, because the 10% that do have a pension and don't have a guaranteed income supplement will never get it. The only way to change their situation is to increase old age security payments. So this is the formal request that we make, is really to increase that basic pension, and normally that would be the old age security. And had it grown, as normally it should have in the past, there wouldn't be any guaranteed income supplement needed anymore. So there's a real gap there. There's a big catch-up needed. And not just in Canada, it's really the same thing in the UK as well. It's in all Western countries that the basic pension system has to be increased and improved. Someone who's got a pension from their employer, well, they have their RPC, but also a sum they're getting from their prior employee, or 12.5, for example, as most people, and then the employer's got 12.5 sending in as well. That's 25%, the plus 12% with the RPC. So that gives them a good deal more, you know.
See, Monsieur Poulin.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin.
Mr. Van Bynen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it interesting that there's concern about the Canada Pension Plan and the structure of these, when the individuals across from us here were the ones that actually raised the age of eligibility for old age retirement to age 67. And I'm wondering, Mr. Poulin, how would that have affected individuals who would have had to work for 2 additional years?
Well, it would have a bad effect on morale, for one, when you plan to retire at the age of 65. And, well, and often people who have considerable salaries make a lot of income. That doesn't have an effect on them. Sometimes that will even increase their eventual earnings from a pension from their employer. But someone who is working in a plant, for example, very difficult. And if they're 65, it can be very difficult for them to even reach that age, the work being so hard.
And the retirement age back down to age 65. And Mr. Casbaro, interested in your organization, Love York Region. As you know, my riding is in York Region. Where's your organization based?
Through the chair, we're based in Vaughan. And
solely in Vaughan?
For now, it's
Okay.
a relatively new organization. We started in late 2019, and obviously we all know what happened short after, but we're working hard to expand throughout York Region.
Have you had an opportunity to connect with the group called CHATS, C-H-A-T-S?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, and have you done anything to work in conjunction with them?
So through the chair, CHATS provides the snow removal service and lawn maintenance services, as you're aware. But unfortunately, through CHATS, you have to pay, even if you are a recipient of the program. So in our case, it is free service, but of course, it is based on income. We do not give the service to everyone. And yeah.
How do you go about finding your clients? Do the clients come to you, or do you go visit areas? I'm trying to find out where this client base is identified.
Through the chair, whether it be through senior stakeholders, I would say, in our community, or through resources such as social media. Obviously, on our website, application forms are available. We're doing a lot of work to make seniors aware that this service is available, but we introduced this service because we saw a need. Mm-hmm. A number of seniors would come to me and come to people in our organization and say that they need assistance with snow removal to be able to maintain their homes, to be able to age in place. And like I said earlier, $600 for snow removal when you're struggling to make ends meet is a big deal. And we're happy to provide that service to seniors.
Yep. Now, in your discussions with CHATS, have you heard about the naturally occurring retirement communities and how the community supports each other so that people can age in place?
No, I personally have not heard of that one, no.
Okay. it's gaining a lot of momentum, and there are a couple of very good pilot projects that are underway that would help people to age in place. I don't want to take away from the good things that you're doing as well, but these are ways that you could supplement it. The Minister of Labour and Seniors indicated that in February to this committee that older seniors are more financially challenged since seniors over the age of 75 are less likely to be working, have higher expenses due to illness or disability, and are more likely to be widowed. What do you think of the minister's perspective, and what would additional support could have been provided to these individuals from 65 to 74? And I guess I'd like to relate that to the client base that you're serving. Are they predominantly over the age of 74, or is it?
Yes, I would say there is an increase in widows who really require that service. So I would say it's widows. And the question, could you repeat the question?
The minister's position was that the older seniors would be more financially challenged, and I think you're confirming that.
Yeah.
And less likely to be employed, and they have higher expenses due to illness and disability. So it would seem to me that the dynamics of this support level was more focused to people that need it the most. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. And when I said earlier that seniors are forced to dip into their savings, that was not a blank statement. That was not a political statement. That was a true statement based on seniors who have spoken with me and said that they've returned to work and they're still not able to keep up. And that's why I think raising the OAS is important, and doing anything that can make life more affordable.
And then again, they would have had to work 2 years longer as well had the retirement age being age 67. So I'm glad that we returned that. Thank you.
Mr. Casbaro. Madame Chabot pour 2 minutes et demi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
You have 2.5 minutes, Madam. Thank you. I know that the retirement age is 65, and that's good. We wouldn't want 67 to be the case, and thank you for having reminded us of that. But that's not the issue before us. The issue is that the old age security system, in which the government decided to discriminate against certain groups of seniors based on their age, and we are trying to ensure that equity is a foundation of our approach. We've mentioned foresight and predictability. We know that demography. So we would like equity to ensure that the old age security system also apply to people from in the age group 65 to 74, that they receive as much. And Mr. Poulin, you seem to support that part of the bill. Do you think it will make a difference, bringing this level of fairness back? I think it makes a difference. Having seen a number of countries, lived in a few countries, we are an example to others. When programming had to be undertaken, let's say in Africa or other countries, well, people look to Canada, and Canada has begun discriminating between certain seniors and others. Someone who's a poor one, who's 65, doesn't get something that a poor one at 75 will get. And I don't think that's the sort of thing that we want to be seen for in Canada, and not the sort of thing we want to be seen for even in our families. Now, there's part of the bill that we haven't really addressed, which aims to increase, go from 5,000 to 6,500, the amount of GS, the amount that is taken into account of their self-employed earnings or income. So people who would choose to go back to work, to ensure they're not penalized. Do you think this is a good measure? Yes, so far, considering retirees who are at the threshold of poverty, that's not adequate income. So we need to ensure there's a pension that keeps them at a livable income level and give them extra advantages to make sure that's the case. Sometimes they have to work, and just because they're working, we shouldn't necessarily reduce their guaranteed income supplement until basically overall they have at least reached this viable income level.
Madame Zerillo for 2.5 minutes, and that will conclude the first
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
list.
And it was a year ago this month, actually, that my colleague MP Rachel Blaney, the NDP seniors critic, tried to pass a unanimous consent motion in the House to get this 10% increase for all seniors, 65 and above. And unfortunately, the Liberals didn't support that at that time. So based on some of the comments we heard today, too, about this user pay mentality that the Liberals brought to the table today, we've got a little bit of an idea of how much of a challenge this is going to be to move this forward. So my question, Mr. Poulin, just knowing that it's going to be a challenge, I think this should be the time where we should ask for any additional amendments. So I've got one to ask. Do you think that the increase of self-employed income or employment earnings to $6,500 is enough? And are there any other amendments that you would want to see come forward in this bill?
Dans mon document qu'on a
In my brief, which has been filed with you, one of the solution pathways concerns really reaching a viable level of income, a livable income, either by working or by raising the GIS. When you work, there's got to be some advantage to that. You need some tax credit, or you have to at least continue to receive the GIS, not have it cut, so that you can maintain a living income and not remain at a poverty threshold.
Do you think 6,500, like if you made 6,550, should they be clawing back the 50? Like, do you think that 6,500 is a good number to raise from 5,000 to 6,500?
No.
You'd want more?
No, I don't. It's, okay. You can move bit by bit, of course. 5,500 is where we're at. But ideally, if a retiree is ready to work, they shouldn't be on the welfare system for the elderly, the GIS. They should be able to work without being penalized. So there should be an advantage to this.
I'm to ask Mr. Casborough kind of the same question. Is there any amendment that you would like to oppose as this is opening up? And do you think that the $6,500 threshold, like increasing to $6,500, is enough?
Through the chair, personally, I have no amendments, but I believe $6,500 is a start, but I don't think it's enough.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Madame Zerillo, that concludes our first round. We will suspend for a few minutes while we transition to the second panel of witnesses. So we'll suspend for 3 minutes. Committee members, the committee will resume with the second panel of witnesses. We have appearing Laura Watts, Chief Executive Officer, and with her is Ayman Malhi. Welcome, Policy Officer, who's appearing together, the Office of Seniors Advocate of British Columbia. Oh, no, sorry, that's for CanAge. And for the Office of Seniors Advocate of British Columbia, we have Isobel McKenzie. I want to advise the third witness that was to appear did not have the proper headset, and therefore will be rescheduled for the next time we hear. So we have two witnesses with us today. So we'll begin. Each of you have 5 minutes to give an opening statement. So I believe, Ms. Watts, you are giving the open statement on behalf of CanAge. So, Ms. Watts, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to give submissions today. My name is Laura Tamblin-Watts, and as noted, I'm the CEO of CanAge, which is Canada's national seniors advocacy organization. We're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization which seeks to improve the lives and well-beings of all Canadians as we age. With me today is Ayman Malhi, who is a CanAge policy officer and a master's student at the University of Toronto. We're going to divide our time together, and I will personally be pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have. In brief, we're strongly in support of this bill to extend the 10% increase in OAS for persons 65 to 74 and to increase the exemption rate from $5,000 to $6,500. To illustrate why, I want to share with you the story of one of our members, who I will call Mary. She was 70 years old. She was from a rural community just outside of Ottawa, where many of you are there today. Mary buried her husband when she was a young woman and raised her 2 children on her own. She made ends meet somehow, and she worked hard her whole life as a custodian and a cleaner until her arthritis prevented her from working any longer. She told me that when she had her 65th birthday, it was the first time in her life she thought, I could finally make ends meet. But Mary was wrong. She fell into the category of seniors who fall short of qualifying for GIS, but who still struggle every day. With housing increasing in some areas in the past few years up to 40%, skyrocketing consumer costs in basics like food and gasoline, Mary just can't manage. She said to me a few months ago, so you're telling me if I was 75, I could get this additional 10%? That makes no sense. I'm a senior. I can't afford my basics and medications. Without the help, I may not make it to 75. Mary's right, and the committee, I'm sure, has heard a lot about the economic impacts of rising costs and inflations that seniors challenge. So we're going to focus on a few key areas. But I do want to acknowledge that the Liberal government has been actively working to modernize the IT infrastructure for the OAS system. We, however, believe that the government would find a way to flow money on a stepwise approach to people in need, as they have previously done before. So we think that the bill should move forward for 3 reasons. 1, things are markedly more expensive now than they were in 2021. This change costs less and keeps seniors healthy. And the third is that the age cutoff doesn't just cause age inequality, but it is actually causing inequalities in more than one area. And I'll turn to my colleague now.
Thanks, Laura. And of course, just as you mentioned, things are more expensive now than they were in 2021. And of course, we believe that this helps to, really increase, catch up to the real increased costs seniors on faced incomes. And the economic circumstances today have changed since the government first introduced the allowable amount for seniors, $875 plus in July 2022. Things are more expensive now than they were when this was made in 2021. For instance, this year, the Bank of Canada increased inflation rates 10 times, a little more than just a year between May 2022 as well as July 2023. And in 2022 alone, prices for day-to-day basics rose sharply, such as transportation, which rose at a 10.6%, food at an 8.9% increase, as well as shelter for a 6.9% increase, rising the most. Seniors are, of course, experiencing inflation differently and cost differently. StatsCan found that seniors spend proportionally less on transportation, gasoline, or a new car, but spend way more on housing and food. In 2005, it was found that for every $100, they spend $56 compared to $45 of all of their households. Seniors are experiencing inflation differently and cost differently very clearly. StatsCan found that seniors spend proportionally less on transportation. So also how we measure poverty does not accurately reflect the real cost seniors face, and in particular, the market basic measure is under review. Currently, the MBM threshold looks at family disposable income, but many of these costs that seniors are facing are not counted. For instance, health and care costs are not included.
And thank you. I'm also just going to point that it actually costs less to keep seniors healthy. And that means this additional money can help people be more socially connected, eat better food, and be more connected through transportation. Healthy eating, living, and relationships with this additional amount really make a big difference. The last point is that the age cutoff at 75 causes other inequalities. We know it's made two classes of seniors, but what it also does is it changes things for people who are struggling with disabilities, older women, and people who are providing as unpaid caregivers. We know that the committee will have many questions, and we look forward to answering them today.
Ms. Watts and Ms. Molly. Now to Ms. McKenzie for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the committee for inviting my testimony. I am the Seniors Advocate for the Province of British Columbia. This is a statutory office of the provincial government with a legislated mandate to monitor services to seniors, undertake systemic reviews, and make recommendations to government on how to improve the supports and services for BC seniors. In addition to health care, housing, and transportation, income support is also included within my mandate. Currently, for the most part, it is the federal government that has assumed the role of providing an income for retired Canadians through the Old Age Security, Guaranteed Income Supplement, and Canadian pension plans. And I'm just going to give some quantification or numbers to some of the stories that previous speakers like Laura and in the previous session spoke to. So for a Canadian retiree who is wholly dependent on their public pensions, so this means they're getting the average amount of CPP and getting a little bit of GIS and OAS, they will have an annual income of $24,000 if they're 75 and under, or a little bit more than $25,000 if they're over 75. If a senior has very little or no CPP, they'll receive the maximum GIS, and their total income will be $22,500 if they're under 75, or $23,400 if they're 75 and older. I want to point out that in all cases, the income they will receive is well below the income of a person who's working at minimum wage in any territory or province in this country. Most Canadian retirees do provide some private pension, either from their RSP or their workplace pension, but the additional amount is very limited, as the overall median income, so 50% of seniors in this country, is very low. In British Columbia, which mirrors for the most part Canada, the median income of a senior is $33,000. In our province, that is still below minimum wage, where 6% of the labor force is employed. And most stunningly, it is 65% lower than the median income of the working age population, 35 to 55. Many have referred to the market-based measure of poverty, and Aman did that as well. And I would challenge that that is not the best tool to look at. Laura has spoken to some of the reasons why, but there's another reason, which is that it is a threshold where if you're $1 above it, you're off. And when you look at seniors, they are very clustered around that poverty line. So it's counterintuitive that 7% of seniors live in poverty as defined by the market-based measure, but almost half of seniors are living on an income below minimum wage. And I think that that is something that is underestimated by a lot of policymakers. Using median incomes, not average, because they reflect a small group of higher income earning seniors, is arguably a better measure to look at what is the actual poverty within our seniors population. Those who have testified before me have spoken of the challenges that seniors are facing with the rising costs and the incomes, and they're not able to keep pace with inflation. And Laura has told you the story of the senior in Ottawa, and the speakers in the session before me were also talking a lot about that. My office does hear increasingly from seniors around affordability issues, most particularly food. And for those who rent, it's the cost of rental housing, which is not surprising given that BC is home to the most expensive housing market in the country. We also do hear from a large number of seniors on dental care costs, which is why I'm so very pleased with the new federal dental plan, and I expect that that will address many of the concerns that we have been hearing. The stories we hear of seniors living with very limited incomes are, of course, very distressing. And the numbers would indicate that these experiences not only are very real, but they're being felt by a larger number of seniors than we might anticipate, particularly those 2 out of 10 seniors who are renters. They're not homeowners. Obviously, I wholly support the provisions of Bill C-319 to raise the OAS for those 65 to 75 by 10% for all of the reasons that the previous speaker has spoken of, and I don't need to repeat those. What I would do is further challenge the committee members to use their influence to look at including CPP in the earnings exemption. So in the previous session, one of your members spoke to providing an incentive for people over 65 who are able to work to continue to work. That's why we have the earnings exemption for GIS. And that's true, and that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is we're penalizing those who can't work. So to put this in perspective, if I am 66 years of age and I defer my CPP and I earn $6,500 a year from employment, my total income will be $27,400. That's my OAS, my top GIS, and my $6,500 in employment income. I am 72 years of age.
Ms. McKenzie, you can address, you're well over to 5 minutes.
Sorry.
You
Okay.
can, points you want to
there.
raise when you get I'm sure you'll get questions. And you can address those as well. I want to correct my apologies, Ms. Tomlin-Watts. I mispronounced your name. As well, I want to, before we move to the questioning round, remind committee members we have resources until 6 o'clock, which is our 2-hour time slot. As it is my intention to go till 6. So with that, Ms. Roberts, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'm going to throw out a question to both of you, and I agree with both of you that the MBM, the measure on how we measure products and poverty, I agree, and I think that that has to be looked at. But I think one of the questions I'd like to ask, and I ask both of you, is the cost of living, which I agree with, is out of control. But it's out of control because of the wasteful spending that this current Liberal government has strapped us with, all the taxpayers. And I just spoke to a senior this past weekend who couldn't even afford to put gas in her car because she did get a little part-time job, 74 years old, and couldn't pay for the gas. And now it's going up April 1st. So do you agree that we have to control our spending if we expect our seniors to live their retirement life in comfort?
Perhaps I'll jump in on that first. Thank you very much, member. I certainly do hear from our members at CanAge that the cost of living is profoundly concerning, and transportation is one of those costs that is going up. Again, the cost of food has been skyrocketing. Cost of housing in some urban centers in Canada have gone up 40% in the last 2 years alone. And all of this is conflated with the pressure that people have right now because our boomer generation are the most indebted generation that we've ever had. So a lot of our traditional understandings about what people can afford have gone out the window since this increase was brought in by the government in 2001, 2002. And that's one of the big pieces that I want to add. So yes, I would offer that gasoline costs are one of those costs, but they are added to a broader cost.
Just because I'm short of time, and I want to pass on my the rest of my time to my colleague, MP Tracy Gray. She's got a few questions, so I'm going to pass it on to her. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. My questions are for Ms. McKenzie. You had produced a report that was called BC Seniors Falling Further Behind in September of 2022. And in this report, it stated BC seniors are, quote, running out of money to buy food some of the time, with 16 at 84%, with 16% of them reporting this happens all or most of the time. So are you finding more seniors who continue to run out of money to buy food?
The short answer is yes. You're quoting from a survey we did of our lower income seniors in British Columbia, those who are in receipt of the BC Low Income Senior Supplement, so that would also be in receipt of the GIS. And those are the seniors for whom they are experiencing the biggest challenge. And food costs are something that they are acutely aware of because it is something they're experiencing, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis.
Great, thank you very much. My next question is, your report also states that 95% of seniors live in their own homes. And so with inflation and the cost of living crisis, are you concerned that many seniors won't be able to afford to stay in their home?
Yes. Remember that most seniors are homeowners, although arguably the ones at greatest financial risk are those who are renters. But when we look at who are homeowners, and you look at the breadth of the value of that home ownership across the province. I'm just producing a report out later this week on rural seniors in British Columbia, and there's a marked difference between the urban and the rural in terms of their overall financial resources. So when you look at costs of insurance, cost of heating, cost of home maintenance that as we age, we're not able to provide for ourselves anymore, and we need to hire people to do that. These are all going to impact a senior's ability to live in their own home. And I think there can be a role for government, whether it's federal or provincial, to provide a program that would allow seniors to, in a more fluid and straightforward way.
Thank you very much. My time is very limited. I want to squeeze in one more quick question. Your report also showed 41% of seniors naming gas prices as the biggest transportation costs they face in getting to where they need. So do you believe that the federal government's plan to continue to increase taxes on gas will see more seniors finding it more difficult to afford gas?
I think any of the factors that are going to contribute to the rising fuel costs, will have an impact on those who are challenged to afford the gas, yes.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to turn this over, just because our time is limited here today, to my colleague, Mr. Aikenson. Thank you.
Oh, I can be quick, Mr. Chair. And I want this to be quick because I want to get back to the members who've got a motion on notice. And at the risk of, maybe my friend across the way talking this out, I just want us to get to a quick vote on it. So the motion reads that the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities undertake a study in accordance with Standing Order 1082 of no less than 8 meetings on housing, homelessness, and tent cities in Canada, and that the committee give priority to this study upon the completion of the committee work on C319. So, what's that, sorry? Did I not say I was actually moving that motion? I am actually moving that motion. I did say it. Okay, good. Sorry, thank you. I was trying to do it so fast, Mr. Chair. At any rate, we've talked about this. It's been on notice. I know that the NDP were eager to have a debate in the House on this very issue, and I think that this would be an appropriate place for us to have a more in-depth discussion about the situation. And so, I'm hopeful that we can move quickly on this and then get back to the witnesses of this important study.
Thank you. The motion is in order. It was circulated within the timeline. It is in both official languages. Any discussion, Mr. Fergus-Caddis, on the motion?
Just have it read one more time, Chair. Could we have it read one more time?
Yes, Madam Clerk, could you read the motion?
That the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities undertake a study in accordance with Standing Order 108.2 of no less than 8 meetings on housing, homelessness, and 10 cities in Canada, and that the committee give priority to this study upon the completion of the committee's work on C319.
Mr. Fragas-Kettos.
I wish to introduce the following amendment, Chair. I'll read it slowly for translation, but the clerk will have the email as well. That the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities undertake a study in accordance with Standing Order 1082 of no less than 4 meetings on the role played by the lack of investment in purpose-built rental, affordable, social, rent geared to income, and co-op housing by successive federal governments in creating the housing and homelessness crisis, as well as 10 cities in Canada. That, with regard to federal housing investments between February 1st, 2006 and October 1st, 2015, this study include particular consideration of the following questions. A, how much federal funding was provided to support the construction of nonprofit or community housing, and how many units were developed? How much federal funding was provided to support the construction of cooperative housing, and how many units were developed? And finally, C, how much federal funding was provided to support the construction of purpose-built rental housing, and how many units were developed? That the committee support its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response thereto. And I move that we go to a vote, Chair.
So it's still debatable.
It's still debatable. Mr. Fragas-Kettos, the motion is in, the amendment is in order, Madam Clerk?
Give me 30 seconds.
Give me a moment while
I would suggest perhaps suspending for a few minutes.
I'm going to suspend the meeting for a couple of moments while the clerk, I consult with the clerk. So we're suspended for a couple of moments. Suspend. The committee is back in order. I'm going to give the floor to Madame Chabot. It was my understanding. Madame Chabot? Madame Chabot, you have a point of order.
Oui, Monsieur
Madame
le
Chabot.
Président.
Yes, indeed, Chair. Yes, point of order. Because the amendment, as it is presented, in my opinion, would not be in order as an amendment. I find that the amendment, as it is stated, changes in a considerable way the motion itself. So to my mind, it's another motion. It's calling for another study. It's not an amendment. So I don't think we should accept that it's an amendment to the main motion. It should be presented as another motion. If the mover wishes that, within the required timeline, of course.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. It is a point of order. I will rule on the point of order, and I do agree with Madame Chabot. The amendment changes the original, or overlaps the original amendment. So I will rule the amendment is out of order. Mr. Area? My ruling is non-debatable. You can challenge.
No, it's not that. I would like to read the motion and the amendment because they were too long for me to comprehend every single word, every sentence. And for me, after hearing that, it appears that the motion and the amendment both speaks as though it's the sole responsibility of the federal government.
Already ruled the amendment is out of order.
And includes the main motion. Oh, sorry.
We can speak to the main motion. We can speak to the main motion. Mr. Collins, on the motion.
On the interpretation, Mr. Chair, I would challenge the chair on that.
Okay. Call a recorded vote on the chair's ruling.
Mr. Fragiscatos?
No.
Mr. Long?
No.
Mr. Collins?
No.
Mr. Area?
No.
Mr. Van Bynen?
No.
Mrs. Gray?
I vote to sustain the chair.
Mrs. Falk?
I vote to sustain the chair.
Ms. Roberts?
Vote to sustain the chair.
Mr. Aitchison?
Yes.
Madame Chabot?
Oui.
Ms. Zarillo?
No.
Yeas pour 5, nays contre 6.
Your ruling has been defeated.
My ruling on the amendment has been defeated, so I will allow then the amendment can be debated. Mr. Aitchison on the amendment.
Well, I'm going to say, I obviously I agree with Madame Chabot, and I agree with you, Mr. Esteemed Chair. You're a wise man and knew what you're talking about. And the fact of the matter is, all the questions that have been raised by Mr. Fragistatos in his amendment are questions that would certainly be asked in the context of what the original motion called for. The original motion called for a study where you could ask questions about all the very specific things he was talking about. Let's not kid ourselves. Federal investment in affordable housing ended in the first Trudeau government. And it actually started to decline in the first Trudeau government. It fully ended in the Chrétien government. So there's no question that there's been not enough federal investment over the years. But I don't know why you'd want to try to presuppose what the outcome of a study might be. I think the issue's far too serious to be playing political games like that. In fact, part of me wonders if it might not have been better if you just tried to talk the whole time out and we wasted time that way instead. This is a ridiculous thing to do.
Madame Chabot and then Madame Zarillo on the amendment of Mr. Fragiskatos.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, In the debate, I spoke against the amendment. I wasn't questioning the basis of it, but whether it was actually in order, and you had already made a decision on that effect. But look, the amendment itself, I'm against it. I'm for the motion, though, the main motion, because the motion is broadly worded. It doesn't point fingers at anyone. It's calling for a study on homelessness, on the tent camps, the cities. And, you know, homelessness is quite a phenomena, both in Canada and in Quebec. We've never seen it at this rate before, and that this study occupies for at least 8 meetings. We could see within the study whether enough is being done to support the cooperative milieu, and all these matters can be addressed. It is a motion which is open, though. It's not restricted to any specific discussion, and with the restrictions that you are suggesting, I'm speaking to our colleagues across the table, you might have put forward your own motion. Look, the committee has disagreed with the chair's ruling on that, but anyway, I still disagree with the motion, and I support the main motion. With
the amendment of Mr. Fragas-Catos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, I was going to add, if I had had the opportunity, in front of on housing in the original motion, lack of affordable housing. So actually, this is even wider than what I was going to ask for. So I'm totally fine with it. One of the things that I would maybe ask, though, is it says that with regard to federal housing investments between 2006 and 2015, I would propose maybe a friendly amendment to take out the word particular if it happens. But I just can't wait to have this discussion about who did social housing worse, the Conservatives or the Liberals. I can't wait for the study.
I didn't hear any particular sub-amendment.
They were all bad. There's no question about it.
Ms. Gray, on the amendment.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this amendment is quite extensive. It does presuppose a lot of what the study was intended to do. There's a number of questions that are posed in here that are very easily accessible on Stats Canada. So I don't know, it's a bit performative to have some of these points in here. It's like they don't really want to do a proper study on housing homelessness in tent cities. The amendment that the Liberals are proposing are very, very prescriptive. And so the purpose for our motion was to be very general, so that we could bring in and hear all kinds of testimony from all different interested parties at the table here, and whatever came of that, then that's the information that we have. This is basically very, very prescriptive, and it wasn't the original intent. And I do appreciate your stance, Chair, for calling this out of order. It's unfortunate that the Liberal NDP coalition is strong here in trying to actually presuppose the study before it even happens. That wasn't our intent. Our intent was to actually have a very good, wholesome study that we could bring in all kinds of witnesses and really hear from all different types of stakeholders. And this is going to very much restrict our ability to do that.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a vote on the amendment.
I wasn't sure with Ms. Cirillo's point. Was she proposing a sub-amendment to take out particular? Because that would be fine with me.
I was suggesting a friendly amendment to just take out particular, because I don't actually think that'll be the majority of the study. I think the majority of the study is to really find out what happened to social housing in the last 40 years.
That would require unanimous consent. I can't see that going anywhere. So, Mr. Fragas-Catos, I'm going to the vote on the amendment. Record a vote on the amendment of Mr. Fragas-Catos.
Mr. Fragas-Catos?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aria?
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
No.
Mrs. Falk?
No.
Ms. Roberts?
No.
Mr. Aitchison?
Not a chance.
Madame Chabot?
No.
Ms. Zarillo?
Yes.
The amendment is carried. Seeing no further discussion, we'll go to a vote on the main motion as amended. Record a vote, clerk.
Mr. Fragas-Catos?
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Aria,
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Sorry, we're being disrupted here.
We're fine. Not enough to disrupt the vote. Continue.
Mrs. Gray,
I'm sorry, I can't.
Ms. Gray, it's a vote.
Okay. No.
Mrs. Falk,
No.
Ms. Roberts,
No.
Mr. Aitchison,
No.
Madame Chabot,
No.
Ms. Zorillo.
Yes.
6 pour, 6, and nays contre 5.
The motion as amended is carried. Seeing no further, I'll return to the business at hand, which was the questioning of the witness with Mr. Fragascatos for 6 minutes. Mr. Fragascatos?
Sure. Okay, we're back. Perfect. Thank you very much to the witnesses for their testimony today. I did want to begin, and probably all my questions will go to Ms. McKenzie. If there's time, certainly I'll change track. But Ms. McKenzie, first of all, thank you very much for the work that you have done as a seniors advocate. I'm not from British Columbia, but have many friends there. My brother lives there, and I know that you recently left the post, and it was unanimous. I was reading online the praise from the various provincial parties in BC on your work. I did note today that you had made a comment on dental care and the government's work with other parties in the House that want to actually get behind a sensible, reasonable, and just measure like this. What does this mean for Canadian seniors that are going to be able now to have, well, to see a dentist, whereas in the past they weren't able to afford to do so? Could you put that in context for us?
Mute. Ms. McKenzie, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Ms. McKenzie.
There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm still here till April 5th, but thank you for your kind words. So dental care is something we hear about probably the most in terms of affordability. So to put it into context, when we surveyed seniors, those with higher incomes were those most likely to have a dental plan, ironically. So if you heard the income data I presented on previously, so imagine on these incomes of $26,000, $27,000 a year, a dental bill of $2,000 to get dental work, particularly around dentures. So I think for many seniors, it will be, I don't know if transformative is too dramatic a word, but they will be able to access dental care that they simply could not afford previously. And I could go on, but I think most of you will understand the importance of oral health around nutrition, being able to eat. As you get older, it actually becomes even more important.
Thank you very much. And I also asked the question from this perspective. Perhaps you've been following Ms. McKenzie at the federal level. Mr. Poilievre has suggested that should the Conservatives form government in the future, that a pay-as-you-go system would be implemented along the lines of what Trump Republicans in the United States have put forward. This is for every dollar that is spent, a dollar of cuts has to be found. And what analysts and in particular experts following seniors policy have suggested recently is that while the policy sounds very simple and therefore very well and good and very nice, quite the contrary. You would have a situation whereby things that are indexed to inflation, vital programs like OAS, GIS, the Canadian Pension Plan generally, that would all, by definition, count as a pay increase or more spending, I should say, would come from that because, again, they are indexed to inflation. And so to offset that, you could have cuts in other vital programs affecting seniors, including dental care. Is that something you're concerned about?
Well, I think overall, the concern is for a group of people who are different from the majority of Canadians. These are a group of people who are retired from the labor force, unable to earn an income and relying on the fixed income of whatever their pensions are. And I've relayed to you how low those incomes actually are for most Canadian seniors. So when you layer on top of that inflationary impacts of what they have to buy with that money, it definitely is concerning. And the other issue that's more nuanced is that as we age, there's this penalty, if you will, the frailty penalty. So a senior enjoying good health at the age of 80 may find their income sufficient, but a senior who has poor health at 80 finds that they have to pay for a lot of things, and if because the social programs we have are not providing them, and that is proving very challenging. That's a nuance that I think is missed when we look at incomes and entitlements for our aging population.
Chair, the chair tells us I have 1 minute. What would be the implications of something else that Mr. Poilievre certainly would do? He's been clear about this in the past, and that is moving the age of eligibility for OAS from 65 to 67. What would that mean for Canadian seniors?
Well, it would depend. I think this issue of what is the retirement age and looking at longevity, years of healthy life, total years in the labor force, I think actually Canadians are going to have to examine.
Point of order, Mr. Chair?
Madam Roberts, clearly state the point of order you're calling it under.
I'm questioning his comment
Ms.
about...
Roberts, that's not a point of order. Continue, Ms. McKenzie. You were both straying.
Sorry. Thank you. So I think that issue is something that is going to continue to be part of the discussion when we look at longer years of life, healthier years of life, and total time in the labor force. Because the thing that is happening is that people are entering the full-time paid labor force at a later age. And so what are the consequences of that? And what are the totality of government policies that are needed to support all of that?
Thank you, Mr. Fragascatos. Madame McKenzie, Madame Chabot, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 6 minutes, Madam. Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm so sorry for the fact that people are making political hay of seniors' issues. At least that's my perception of what's going on, Ms. McKenzie. So right now, the bill before us, you see, intends to redress an inequity regarding old age security. So let's be clear on that. The government decided in 2022 to provide a 10% increase of OAS for those of 75 years and older, and 0%, nothing for seniors between the ages of 65 and 74. Ms. McKenzie, is it your opinion that this inequity creates really important inequality for seniors of 65 to 74 years of age?
Yes, it is. I fully support the move to increase the OAS by the 10% for the 65 to 75 seniors. Absolutely.
Madame, merci.
Thank you, Madam. Now, in Quebec, the landscape when it comes to seniors is that about 70% or 40% of their income goes to important spending on housing, food, and transportation. My question is for Ms. Watts. Suggests that people have fixed income should get only 0% increase given the inflation, which is a heavy burden on all of us. How would you describe that? Does that help equality or not?
I think having these two divisions is a significant problem. both on the face of the inequality of it, but because of people like Mary who say that it's the quality of life between 65 and 74 that allows for the quality of life for 75 and older. So it doesn't just create inequality on the face of it, it creates substantive inequality. And this is especially true if we're talking about people with frailty, people with disabilities, people who are newcomers to Canada and others. So there's many levels of discrimination that are impacted in this particular choice. And it's our hope that the government sees that things have moved enough that they should bring everybody back up to the same position.
Another question in the same line of thinking. You've mentioned quality of life, but how much does increasing the old age security pensions as of the age of 65, well, how much would it help with quality of life?
As my previous colleagues have mentioned, the amount of public pension is extremely modest. And we know that people who are only living on public pensions struggle. They are at or below poverty levels. And the way that we calculate seniors' poverty is also problematic. So there's many, many people who are not captured with visibility, which my colleague Isabel spoke of before. And I know the government is rethinking its market basket measure. All of this to say, if you can't stay well between 65 and 74, the cost to this government and the cost to the individual well-being, the physical money out of pocket that people will pay for their own home care, for their own health and supports and nutrition is going to be problematic. And it's going to mean that people are going to be increasingly frail, increasingly isolated. Is it enough? No. Will it make a difference? Yes.
And another question. I think I heard you say in your opening statement that you also agree with increasing, the ability, for people who are able to go back to work to increase their earnings by ensuring they don't lose their GIS. So you would agree that the amount to be deferred is $5,000 to $6,500. Is that enough, though?
Madame, je dirais que c'est un pas dans la bonne direction. Beaucoup de personnes, avec le vieillissement, doivent retourner sur le marché du travail, mais veulent aussi y retourner. Et les provisions de récupération doivent être indexées à la réalité de notre situation économique. Donc, nous appuyons le changement à 6 500. Nous voudrions encourager le gouvernement à faire preuve de souplesse sur les revenus et les pensions à la retraite de façon à réfléchir, à être un reflet de la longévité, de l'espérance de vie grandissante des Canadiens.
Puis on l'entend, en tout cas, dans les arguments qui justifient au gouvernement cette distinction. On dit que les 65 à 74 ans s'en sortent mieux, donc ils n'ont pas besoin d'augmentation de pension. Est-ce que vous trouvez que toutes les personnes de 65 à 74 ans...
The interpretation.
Unfortunately, you have no interpretation? Testing, testing. Usually it's myself. Madame Chabot. So, do you agree, Ms. Watts, that seniors aged 65 to 74 are doing better than others, and that being the case, they don't need an increase to their OAS?
It's not the circumstance that we see. And if there's real concerns about people unduly getting money that they don't deserve, that's why we have clawback provisions, and that's why we have the GIS.
Madame Tomlin-Watt. Ms. Cirillo for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my first questions are for Ms. McKenzie, and I just want to thank you so much for your service and also for your expertise that you've shared over the years. I feel quite fortunate to have this opportunity to ask you some questions today. As a woman in Parliament, I often try to put a gender lens on things. So my question was really around women being more at risk of poverty in retirement due to a number of factors. And I'm wondering, what you've heard in research and in the work that you do from senior women on their ability to cover costs in the two different age groups, the 65 to 74 and the 75 plus?
Yes, women are disproportionately disadvantaged for a number of reasons, all of which will be intuitive to most of you and are backed up by the numbers. So less likely to have spent their maximum years in the labor force, less likely to have been working at the maximum insurable earnings for those years, all of taking time out. We've made an adjustment for the family, increasingly leaving early to care for aging parents and then an aging spouse. And the dynamic that we're still seeing, and we will continue to see probably over the next cohort and maybe the one after that, is the spousal pension income from the husband is a more significant contribution, and the husband's the male life expectancy is less, and so they are more likely to be left a widow than a widower. And that plays out in the lower incomes as well. And you see that in the tax filer data very clearly. And the other burden, in addition to the cost, is just the burden overall on women of being caregivers. It's not universal, but on balance of probability, women are more likely to be caregivers.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. And I heard, and I recently received correspondence from someone in my riding, and I do actually have a caregiver mailer that recently went out in my riding and got a lot of feedback about people that are looking after an aging spouse, and they are under 75. So there's many costs that seem to go along with that. Has that been your experience in the seniors that you've spoken to, that under 75, there's a lot more caregiving happening among women than over 75?
Yes, and that's borne out by a number of surveys we do and who answers the survey and their age. So, if somebody is in their 90s and having a family caregiver, it's probably their daughter who is a senior, 65 or 68 years of age. And often they will leave the paid labor force earlier in terms of retirement than they would otherwise have done, except to care for that aging parent.
Need of OAS at that time?
Pardon me?
And then are they in need of the income supports like OAS at that time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. So my question now for Ms. Tamble Watts. Is it Watts or Walls? I'm sorry. Watts. Thank you.
It's an impossible name. It's Tamble Watts.
Yes, that's good. Well, it's just I wrote it down myself, and I can't read my own writing right now. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cost of housing and the impacts that you're seeing with the seniors that you serve around housing. Can you share some anecdotes? I know you were talking about Mary earlier, but what has changed over the last few years in regards to housing for seniors?
I think it's really important to remember that we are in a big intergenerational transfer of wealth, but there are older adults that are now aging are very indebted. So we have this idea that the greatest generation is who we're serving, and it's not true. We're moving into boomers right now, and the boomers owe on average about $1.76 for every $1 they owe. So this is a very different type of group that is aging, and conflated with that, not only are they retiring with mortgages, in some cases we're seeing people retire with student debt and mortgages. In top of that, we're seeing escalations in many urban centers of a 40% increase in the cost of housing. And in rural communities where you might think that it's cheaper to live, the reality of the circumstances is that many people cannot live in rural communities because the housing is too disaggregated from other community support. So we are in a crisis situation right now. And even a small increase like the one that's being proposed can make a difference for many older adults between being able to be housed and being able to be unhoused. And we understand that the rates of homelessness for older adults in Canada has been the highest it has ever been in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And I know there is studies and news that say that Canadians they do pay their rent and their mortgage first. So how does that those expenses and leaves less money for other budget items in the house? Like what are they giving up? What are seniors giving up
Every day we hear from our members who say they have to make a decision. They've got to keep the roof over their house and some food. And after that, everything that is at the basic level becomes optional. And that's a horrible circumstance between making decisions whether to heat your house or to eat nutritionally, whether to take your medications or be able to get some social connectivity by affording a transportation cost or even a small community membership to be involved in an active aging center. These are decisions no Canadian senior should have to make. And it is one that our members are facing every day.
And thank you for raising that. There was a witness before that.
Ms. Cirillo, I have 3 minutes left. Is the wish of the committee to use it? If it does, then we go to Ms. Gray for 3 minutes. Ms. Roberts, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question to Laura. I recently visited and volunteered at a food bank, Sidam Food Bank in Toronto, where they delivered in 1 month to 3,000 seniors. The reason that they deliver it is because, A, the seniors, first of all, can't afford to go and pick it up. Again, we go back to the carbon tax. So they phone in their order, and Vishali will have his volunteers drive the package to the seniors. And one of the other things that I found out by volunteering there was that the seniors that are able to come there try and come only once a week because they have to make sure that they have enough fuel in the tank to get to work as well. They're working, they're going to food banks, they can't afford their housing costs, and it's all related to the lack of responsibility from this government and their inflationary spending. How can you help us help seniors? What suggestions do you make to this government so that we can control the cost of living so that seniors can live out their retirement days?
Certainly, we heard from our members that the funds that came for the grocery benefit was important, and that actual cash in hand is critically important to older people. But I would also say that the caregiver benefit that we're talking about moving to refundable benefit would also be of significant assistance.
Isn't it sad that we have to force our seniors to food banks after working all these years because the cost of living is so out of control? I mean, this particular food bank in 1 month, 3.17 meals. 3.17 meals. How embarrassing is that for a country like Canada? It's just unheard of. I mean, we're short about, what, 2+ million homes? People can't afford it. I mean, what else are we doing wrong? I'll tell you what we're doing wrong. We're spending more money because the government expects us to live on a budget, but yet they can blow money like it's candy, and we have to pay for it. So seniors are fed up, and I'll tell you, I'm hearing from my seniors that they've had enough. They have had enough of this country, and they either changes have to come or they're moving out, and that's really sad for me to hear.
We are hearing that members have never been more concerned, and that financial well-being tied to social well-being, food, supports, community engagement, we're at a tipping point, and we need to make sure that our governments in Canada are responsive to an age-inclusive country, and that we don't just think about benefits as a one-off, things like the Canadian caregiver benefit as a way forward, but we actually start thinking about how our Canada is aging and put things in place to make sure that we're not running into crises, but we're doing it with a view to our aging population.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts and Ms. Tremlett. Our time has concluded. We're a little bit over. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn? Committee adjourned. Thank you, witnesses, for appearing today, and thank you, committee members, for participating.
Thank you for the opportunity.